Today is Saturday, May 1st, 2021, which means it's Derelict Saturday. And I'm late again. Hello, fiendlings, how the hell are ya? We're currently being deluged by storm after storm, and the Eurythmics' Here Comes the Rain Again won't get the void out of my head. It's annoying, to say the least. Despite the thunderclaps, I got caught up in a code NATO yesterday and was exhausted by the time I found myself out of the ability to code. Therefore, this episode is quote-unquote late. On the writing front, I have a story in progress for an unnamed anthology. It's one of those that might never find a home, but it will always have a home in my Suits collection whenever I have enough tales to publish that. Hopefully I'll finish up most of my contract and I can get refocused on writing, recording, and robots. While some folks say hope springs eternal, my go-to phrase is hope in one hand, shit in the other. I smell poop. Be safe, have a great week, and we'll talk again real soon. Here's episode 22 of Derelict, Trident. Chapter 35. Talby's comms came to life with a staticky squelch. He flinched, his hands immediately tightening on the controls.
Talby?
It was the captain. Talby forced himself to relax, a little. Aye, sir, was just wondering...
Lieutenant,
Dunn said, cutting him off mid-sentence.
we have a change in plans.
Talby almost asked how that was any different than normal, but decided not to speak it aloud. Aye, sir, go.
We're getting the casualties and the scientists off the ship and to the med bays. It's one of the only safe harbors on the station.
Survivors? He could practically hear the captain's grin.
Survivors, many more than I expected. We'll need you to fly cover. There are a few places on our route that are open to space.
Talby nodded. He knew what the captain was thinking. Any part of the station exposed to space was also a possible entry point for attackers. Pine cones, starfish, what it was didn't matter. Any unarmed human, regardless of their suit type, would be easy prey. Void. Even when you had a perfectly good sidearm or fighter, the odds weren't exactly stacked in your favor.
Black will send you the coordinates for our run. She'll also update you when she can once our positions change. Just know that our communications might get spotty. Until someone flicks the power switch, we won't be able to boost our comms enough to get through the hull, so keep a lookout.
Aye, sir. A new connection request hit his block. It was the captain. Aye, sir. All communications regarding Black and any other AIs will be block only. Understood? Talby nodded to himself, but felt damned confused. What the hell was the captain talking about? Sir, can you... James, the trio are here and online. Talby's mouth dropped open, and his lips squirmed for a moment. The trio? The surprise quickly disappeared into a vat of rage. The trio, the fucking machines that sent he and his company out into the void to die, to face off with Talby! The force of Dunn's thoughts shattered the conversation he'd been having with himself, but it didn't diminish his fury. Sir, they have control over some portions of the station, but they are not the same trio that sent us to Pluto. Talby waited for more, but Dunn had gone silent. When the captain said a little more nothing, Talby cleared his throat and concentrated on his thoughts. What trio are they? Black thinks they were reset. All memories of the past 50 years are gone. It's like they were reborn. Will they help us? Yes, but can they be trusted? I don't know. Sir, if they're not the real trio, where is the real trio? What happened to them? Conversation for another time. Dunn's thoughts had become prickly. Black will send the route. Get in position and I'll let you know when we're a go. Aye, sir. Are you sure block comms are safe? There was a long pause. No, Dunn finally thought to him. Talby nodded to himself. Aye, sir. Dunn out. The block connection terminated, leaving Talby staring at Trident's damaged and scarred hull plates. Dunn was going to try and move everyone off of S&R Black. The captain hadn't given a reason why, but Talby thought it had to do with this trio nonsense. Or maybe Black had finally done something to lose his trust. Talby clenched and unclenched his fingers on the controls. It seemed like just yesterday that the void-damned universe made some amount of sense. Now, Mira had proven there was life out there. Worse, it had proven to other spacefaring species that humanity existed. And as if the exosolar baddies weren't enough of a problem, now they had to worry about their own AIs. The holo display lit with a flight plan. Talby glanced down at his fuel gauge. He was good for a while. As long as he wasn't expected to jet a high speed from one side of the station to the other, he'd be fine. If there was a fight, however, he wasn't sure just how long the craft would remain functional. The path would require him to leave his current nesting spot, rise over the station's spine, and descend to the other side. The captain's egress had him taking the civvies and casualties through the slip points by way of a few snaking corridors to avoid the worst of the damaged hull plates. Black had marked the portions of the flight plan that were exposed to space with bright yellow hazard icons. "What's the estimate on their flight time?" Black responded without a beat.
27 minutes and 38 seconds is my best guess, but that time will easily be affected by encounters with unknown hostiles, difficulties with suit operation by non-qualified personnel, and...
"I get it." Talby took a deep breath. "What's going on, Black?" That made her pause.
Regarding?
"Did something happen?" Talby asked. "I mean, while I've been out here." Black had either been pretending not to know what he was talking about or wanted to fish for how much he knew. The latter idea was a bit disturbing.
Perhaps you should ask Captain Dunn.
Talby raised an eyebrow. "Black, you sound like a scolded child." Black said nothing. He wasn't sure he liked the entity that called itself Black. Before they woke up in Pluto's orbit, she'd been non-intrusive, fun to joke with, and mostly incapable of grasping difficult concepts. Just the way a military AI was supposed to be. But now, she was dangerous. At least the captain thought she was. When Talby had finally entered his own stasis pod, his last thought was to wonder if he'd ever wake up. With Black at the helm, he put their odds at 1 in 3. Waking up at all had been a relief. But if not for Black, Kalimura's squad would have been lost. S&R Black might not have even survived the starfish attacks without her. The entity had saved them as often as it had put them in danger. Black could have killed them or let them die, but instead she protected them and ensured they woke up. The trio had fucked with her mind, though. That much was obvious, unless, of course, she'd been lying this entire time. He shivered. Maybe Dunn had finally realized they were at her mercy so long as Marines were aboard her. Talby grunted. Even empty of personnel, S&R Black was a hell of a weapon. She still had enough conventional ordnance to blast the hangar bays into metal confetti. Without the heavy plating that covered the station's exterior, her guns could wipe out the bulkheads in a matter of seconds. Or she could just self-detonate, he said aloud, and bit his lip.
Did you say something, Lieutenant?
Black asked. He shook his head. No, Black, just thinking. Talby forced himself to study the flight plan again. The paths had several different possibilities, but all led to the same place, the medical bays. Dunn was obviously concerned about 2 of the paths that would take them through an area of shattered hull plates. Talby sucked in air. He was nearly bingo on ammo. Once that was gone, he'd be down to ramming any threats. Talby grinned. That wouldn't be a bad way to go out. Better than having the fucker snack on him while he floated helpless in space. If Copenhagen were in the back, he might stand a chance. No. If he had full magazines as well as a gunner, then he might be okay. Besides, no reason to risk another life when this was so obviously a suicide mission. My chances? Black didn't ask for context.
40% and dropping.
Talby blinked. Why dropping?
The trio just informed me there is a large mass heading toward Trident Station. It should be within scanning range in 20 minutes at present speed.
Has it changed direction?
No.
Black said.
It is, however, decelerating.
Show me. A new hologram appeared. The center point marked his location at Trident Station. Behind him, a minuscule dot appeared at the edge of the virtual map. 20 minutes. How long after that is it going to be in my space?
I estimate 8 to 10 minutes.
Oh, shit, Talby said. It's going to arrive just as the captain is in the middle of an evacuation.
Yes,
Black said.
That is correct.
Talby wanted to scream, but knew the sound would only be trapped by his helmet and pierce his own ears. Deep breaths. Deep breaths. Clenched fingers, unclenched fingers. Warn me when it gets close.
Of course,
Black said. How long before Dunn would start the evacuation? And how long did they really have before whatever the new threat was arrived? Chapter 36. White. The entire universe had transformed itself into a formless, shapeless, edgeless plane of white. No color, no contrast. As if that wasn't bad enough, his fucking head hurt. Gunny tried to close his eyes and banish the glare, but it remained. The glare hurt. Thinking hurt. In some distant universe, one where things made sense and weren't so painful, he might have groaned. But here, lost in the white, he had no lips, no mouth, no capability to produce sound and give voice to the wretched ache and the sharp stabs of pain that punished his every brain cell. Eternity sprawled before him, and it wasn't a place of joy or celebration or even worship. Nor was it the infamous Sheol or Hell or the underworld. It was, in fact, nothing. A few jumbled thoughts and images coursed through his aching brain, but even he couldn't understand them. Confusion. Images from real paper texts, words with ominous portent, shaved heads, cassocks, crosses, stars, crescents, colors that turned to smears of nothing when he tried to focus. All became white, only white. The thoughts cycled from panic and rage into simple acceptance. Gunny's consciousness had once again faded, leaving only his subconscious behind. The white was gone, and he was no longer floating. He sat in a comfortable chair, the sleeves of his jumpsuit crisp and looking as though he just pulled it from his locker and put it on. There was no sound except for a nearly inaudible hum that sounded so much like S&R Black's engines at idle. Gunny relaxed slightly. The unseen light fractured, and the room flickered from existence and into a sheet of white. No! He tried to scream. He wanted to stay in the room, anything to get away from the white. The world flickered again, one edge of the universe containing the image of the room while the other held the lighted abyss. His tired and exhausted mental fingers tore into the room, and he imagined himself pulling. The white flashed out of existence, and he was back in the chair. His mind reeled for a second, and the images all spun and bounced off one another before coalescing back into that of the room. The ambient light had softened slightly, and there were shadows. Contrast, blessed contrast. Gunny would have sighed if his lungs worked. He wasn't breathing. He touched his arm and felt nothing. He could move his fingers, his arms, but there was no sensation in telling him he'd done it. He tried to speak, but nothing came out. On the verge of panic, he tried to stand, but his wobbly legs gave out and he fell back into the chair. He tried to push off the chair, but again fell back into the seat. Just as he was about to try again, even though his head now felt like it was being hammered on by squiddy deck apes, 3 shapes appeared. The first was not so much a shape as a gathering of tendrils rotating around a corona of blue light. The second was a crimson tear that seemed to bleed white light that vanished the moment it dribbled from the shape's surface. The third might as well have been an eye cut from reality. The shape extruded red and blue tendrils that flowed in all directions before disappearing back into the eye, only to appear again. 3 voices, a syncopated choir, spoke.
You are damaged beyond repair.
Gunny tried to speak, but the words didn't make sense in his mind. He couldn't put them together in a fashion that fit, that conveyed what he wanted to say. It was like trying to assemble a functioning machine from a planet-sized scrapyard of shattered parts and broken dreams.
Don't panic,
a voice said. It was the eye that had said that, and its voice sounded familiar.
Don't try to talk,
the eye continued.
Just listen.
The choir began speaking. They showed him images. They showed him sights he didn't know existed. Then they showed him what was happening now. When they asked their question, Gunny didn't need to think or speak to reply. Instead, he sent the trio a single image, that of a missile hitting its target.